thought she was simply earning money to save her family, until the moment she looked into the prisoner's eyes and realized nothing about him or this mission was what it seemed. What she chooses next will change everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty town of Fort Verde in the summer of 1878. Sarah Mitchell stepped off the stagecoach, her traveling dress already clinging to her skin from the oppressive heat. She clutched her small leather suitcase tightly, surveying the rough frontier settlement with a mixture of apprehension and determination. At 24 years old, she had left her comfortable life in Boston behind, driven by desperation and the promise of wages that could save her family's failing farm back east. A stern-looking man in military uniform approached her, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. "Miss Mitchell, I presume. I'm Captain Hartwell. Welcome to Fort Verde." His voice carried the weariness of a man who had seen too much of the harsh realities of frontier life. Sarah nodded, extending her gloved hand. "Thank you, Captain. I received your telegram. You mentioned the position involves caring for a prisoner?" Captain Hartwell's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "More like guarding, Miss Mitchell. Follow me to my office. There are details we need to discuss before you make your final decision." He turned on his heel and began walking toward a low adobe building that served as the fort's headquarters. Inside the relative coolness of his office, Sarah sat in a wooden chair that had seen better days. The captain poured himself a glass of whiskey, offering her water from a ceramic pitcher. "Miss Mitchell, I'll be frank with you. The job pays well because it's difficult and potentially dangerous. We have an Apache warrior in custody. He's been here for 3 months, refusing to eat properly, refusing to cooperate with our translators, and making life difficult for everyone involved." Sarah's green eyes widened slightly. "An Apache? Captain, I was told I would be caring for a sick prisoner, not guarding a warrior." "He is sick, in a manner of speaking," Hartwell replied, leaning back in his chair. "He won't eat enough to sustain himself properly. We need someone to ensure he takes food and water, to monitor his condition. My men are soldiers, not nursemaids. We've tried everything, but he responds with either silence or hostility. I thought perhaps a woman's presence might make a difference. You'd be well compensated, and you'd have armed guards stationed outside his cell at all times." Sarah felt her heart racing. The money was more than she could make in 6 months as a schoolteacher back east. Her father's letters had become increasingly desperate. The farm was drowning in debt. Her younger siblings were going hungry. And this opportunity, dangerous as it seemed, might be their only salvation. "What exactly would my duties entail?" "You'd bring him meals 3 times daily, ensure he drinks water, and report any changes in his condition to me or the fort doctor. You'd spend perhaps an hour total with him each day, never alone without guards nearby. The pay is $50 a month plus room and board here at the fort." $50. Sarah's mind reeled. That was more than most men made. "When would I start?" "Tomorrow morning, if you're willing. Tonight, you'll stay in the quarters we've prepared for you. Get some rest and think it over carefully. This isn't a decision to make lightly." That night, Sarah lay awake on the narrow cot in her small room, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier fort. She thought of her father's weathered face, her mother's tired eyes, her little brother Thomas, who had written her a letter in his careful child's handwriting, asking when they might have meat for dinner again. She thought of her sister Mary, only 16, whose dreams of attending normal school were fading with each passing day of poverty. When dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah had made her decision. She dressed carefully in a simple gray dress, pinned her auburn hair into a neat bun, and made her way to the captain's office. "I'll take the position, Captain Hartwell." The officer nodded slowly. "Very well. Come with me. I'll introduce you to your charge, though introduction might be too generous a word for it." They walked across the compound to a small stone building set apart from the others. 2 soldiers stood guard at the entrance, their rifles at the ready. Captain Hartwell unlocked the heavy wooden door, and the smell of unwashed bodies and despair hit Sarah like a physical force. "He's in the back cell," Hartwell said quietly. "His name is Dakota, though he hasn't spoken it himself. We learned it from another Apache scout who identified him. It means friend to everyone. Ironically enough, given his current disposition. Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The building was divided into 3 cells, but only one was occupied. As they approached the barred enclosure, she saw him. Dakota sat on the floor in the corner, his back against the stone wall, his legs drawn up. Even in the poor light, Sarah could see he was a magnificent specimen of manhood. His chest was bare, revealing a muscular torso marked with old scars that told stories of battles survived. His hair, black as a raven's wing, hung past his shoulders. His face was all sharp angles and proud bearing, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw. But it was his eyes that caught and held Sarah's attention. They were dark, intense, and filled with a mixture of rage and profound sorrow that made her heart constrict unexpectedly. Those eyes fixed on her now, and Sarah felt as though he could see straight through to her soul. There was intelligence there, and something else, a wild spirit that refused to be broken despite the chains that bound his wrists and ankles. "This is Miss Mitchell," Captain Hartwell announced. "She'll be bringing your meals from now on. I suggest you cooperate with her." Dakota's gaze never wavered from Sarah's face, but he made no response. His expression remained impassive, though Sarah thought she detected a flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, in those fathomless dark eyes. "I'll leave you to it then," the captain said to Sarah. "Breakfast will be brought shortly. The guards will remain right outside. If you need anything, just call out." Sarah found herself alone with the imprisoned warrior, separated only by iron bars. She moved closer slowly, her hands clasped in front of her. "My name is Sarah," she said softly. "I know you probably don't understand me, and I don't expect you to trust me, but I'm not here to hurt you." For a long moment, Dakota simply stared at her. Then, to her complete astonishment, he spoke in perfect accented English. "You should not be here. This place will destroy whatever goodness you carry in your heart." Sarah's breath caught. "You speak English? I was educated at a mission school as a child, before I returned to my people. I choose not to speak to soldiers. They do not listen even when I use their words." His voice was deep and resonant, with a musical quality that seemed at odds with his current circumstances. Sarah found herself drawn closer to the bars, fascinated despite her better judgment. "Why won't you eat?" she asked. Dakota's eyes grew hard. "Would you eat if you were torn from everything you love, chained like an animal, kept in this stone cage while your family wonders if you are dead? Food tastes like ashes in the mouth of a man who has lost his freedom." Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest. She understood loss, understood desperation, but she had never truly understood captivity. "What did you do to end up here?" "I defended my land. I fought to protect my sister and her children when soldiers came to force us onto the reservation. I killed 2 men. They would have killed me, but their captain wanted me alive, wanted to make an example of me. So here I rot, waiting for them to decide my fate." "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Dakota tilted his head, studying her with renewed interest. "Why would a woman like you come to such a place? You do not belong in this desert among soldiers and prisoners and violence." "I need the money," Sarah admitted. "My family is struggling. The farm is failing. This job pays enough to help them survive." Something shifted in Dakota's expression, a softening around his eyes. "So we are both prisoners of circumstance. You sell your time to help those you love. I am here because I tried to protect those I love. Perhaps we are not so different, Sarah Mitchell." The way he said her name, with that slight accent, made it sound like something beautiful and strange. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks and turned away, confused by her reaction to this man, who should have been nothing more than a dangerous prisoner in her eyes. A soldier arrived with a tray of food, plain fare consisting of beans, cornbread, and weak coffee. Sarah took it and brought it to the cell, sliding it through the opening at the bottom of the bars designed for that purpose. "Will you eat today?" she asked. Dakota looked at the food, then back at her. "If I eat, will you come back tomorrow?" "I'll come back regardless, it's my job." "Then I will eat because you answered honestly. I am weary of lies." He moved forward with a rattle of chains, unfolding his tall, powerful frame. Standing, he was easily over 6 feet, his presence commanding even in captivity. He picked up the tin plate and began to eat slowly, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "Tell me about your family," he said between bites. "Tell me about the people you are trying to save." And so Sarah found herself talking, telling this Apache warrior about her father's dreams of making the farm prosper, her mother's quiet strength, Thomas's fascination with books despite having so few, and Mary's artistic talent that might never flourish. She talked until the plate was empty, until the morning sun had climbed higher in the sky. When she finally left the cell building, her head was spinning. She had taken this job expecting to care for a savage, a dangerous animal in human form. Instead, she had found a man of intelligence and depth, a man who spoke with eloquence and looked at her with eyes that seemed to see everything she tried to hide. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Sarah could not stop thinking about Dakota, about the injustice of his imprisonment, about the pain she had seen in his eyes, about the way his voice had wrapped around her name like a caress. She told herself it was simply compassion, simply human decency that made her heart ache for him. But deep down, in a place she was afraid to examine too closely, Sarah knew it was already something more. The days began to blur together in a rhythm that Sarah had never anticipated. Each morning, she would wake before dawn, dress carefully, and make her way across the compound to the stone prison building. Each morning, Dakota would be waiting, sitting in the same corner, his dark eyes tracking her movements from the moment she entered. Their conversations deepened with each passing day. Sarah learned that Dakota had been born into the Chiricahua Apache band, that his father had been a respected warrior who died fighting to protect their homeland, that his mother had passed from illness when he was only 12 years old. He told her about his sister, Kimimela, whose name meant butterfly, and her 3 children who were now on the reservation without him to help provide for them. "They are probably struggling," Dakota said one morning, his voice heavy with worry. "My sister's husband was killed 2 years ago in a raid. I have been the man of the family since then. The children, they need someone to teach them, to hunt for them, to protect them. And I am here, useless while they suffer." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She had become accustomed to the way his presence affected her, the way her pulse quickened when she saw him, the way she found herself thinking about him during every moment they were apart. It terrified her, and thrilled her in equal measure. "Tell me about them. What are their names?" Dakota's expression softened, as it always did when he spoke of his family. "The oldest is Takala. She is 9 summers. Her name means corn tassel. She is fierce and brave, much like her mother. Then there is Ahiga. He is 6, and his name means he fights. He has the spirit of a warrior, always protecting his little sister. The youngest is Ayasha, only 4 summers old. Her name means little one. She used to follow me everywhere, calling me uncle with such joy in her voice." "You love them very much," Sarah said softly, sitting on the floor outside his cell. She had stopped standing during their conversations weeks ago, finding it more natural to settle near the bars where they could speak more intimately. "They are my blood, my responsibility. Love does not seem a strong enough word for what I feel. They are the reason I fought, the reason I would fight again if given the chance. A man without family is a man without purpose." Sarah understood that sentiment more than he could know. Her own family was the reason she endured the stares of the soldiers, the whispers about the propriety of a young woman spending time alone with a savage prisoner, the way Captain Hartwell watched her with increasing concern. "Sarah," Dakota said, his voice dropping lower, more urgent, "you must promise me something. If anything happens to me, if they decide to execute me or send me away, you must promise to find my sister. Tell her that my last thoughts were of her and the children. Tell her to be strong, to teach the little ones about our ways so they are not forgotten. Nothing is going to happen to you," Sarah said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew they might be a lie. She had heard the soldiers talking. There were those who wanted Dakota hanged as an example to other Apaches who might resist relocation. There were others who wanted him sent to a prison in Florida, far from his homeland, where many Apache prisoners had already died from diseases their bodies could not fight. "You cannot promise that," Dakota replied, "but you can promise to carry my message. Please, Sarah, this is all I ask of you." She looked into his eyes, those beautiful, tormented eyes, and felt something inside her break and reshape itself into something new and dangerous. I promise. But I will do everything in my power to make sure it never comes to that. Dakota reached through the bars, his movements slow so as not to alarm the guards outside. His fingers, calloused and strong, touched her hand where it rested on the stone floor. The contact sent electricity through Sarah's entire body. You have a good heart. Too good for this place. Too good for the ugliness of what men do to each other. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She should pull away. She should stand up and leave. Instead, she turned her hand over, letting his fingers intertwine with hers. My heart is my own to give, Dakota, and it has been trying to tell me something for weeks now, something I have been too afraid to acknowledge. What does it tell you? His voice was barely above a whisper, rough with an emotion that matched the tumult in her own chest. That you are not what they say you are. That you are a good man caught in circumstances beyond your control. That you deserve freedom, deserve happiness, deserve so much more than these chains and this cage. Dakota's grip on her hand tightened. And what else does your heart say, Sarah? Tell me true. She met his gaze, and in that moment, she let down all the walls she had built, all the defenses she had maintained. That I care for you, more than I should. More than is wise or proper or safe, that when I am not with you, I am thinking about you, that your pain has become my pain, your hopes my hopes. For a long moment, Dakota said nothing. Then he brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that was so gentle, so reverent, it brought tears to her eyes. I have dreamed of you, Sarah Mitchell. Before I knew you existed, I dreamed of a woman with hair the color of autumn leaves and eyes like the forest. I dreamed she would be my salvation or my destruction. I could not tell which. Now I know you are both. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her voice shaking. You have given me a reason to want to live again, to hope again. But you have also shown me what I can never truly have. When they take me from here, when they end my life or send me away, the loss of you will be worse than any torture they could devise. Sarah shook her head vehemently. No, I will not accept that. There has to be a way. There has to be something we can do. There is nothing, Dakota said, his voice filled with resignation. I am a prisoner of the United States Army. My fate is sealed. All we can do is treasure these moments we have, these stolen conversations, this connection that defies all reason and propriety. But Sarah's mind was already racing. She had spent weeks at Fort Verde, watching the routines, learning the patterns of the guards, understanding the layout of the compound. She had listened to the soldiers talk, had heard their complaints about night duty, about the monotony of their assignments. An idea began to form, dangerous and desperate, but possible. What if there was a way? She asked carefully. What if I could help you escape? Dakota's eyes widened, and he released her hand as if it had burned him. No, absolutely not. Sarah, they would hang you for such a thing. I will not allow you to risk your life for mine. My life is already at risk, Sarah argued, her voice passionate. Every day I stay here, every day I fall deeper in love with you. I risk my heart, my future, everything I thought I wanted. If you die or disappear to some distant prison, what kind of life will I have? Knowing I did nothing to save you, knowing I let fear stop me from fighting for the man I love. The words hung in the air between them, powerful and irrevocable. Sarah had said it. She loved him. There was no taking it back, no pretending anymore. Dakota's face transformed, a mixture of joy and agony crossing his features. You love me? Truly? With everything I am, Sarah confessed. I know it is madness. I know the world will never accept it, that we come from different worlds, different peoples. But my heart does not care about any of that. It only knows that you are the man it has chosen, and I cannot stand by and watch you be destroyed. Dakota pressed his forehead against the bars, his eyes closed. Sarah, my beautiful, brave Sarah, I have loved you since the day you first spoke to me with kindness in your voice. I have loved you through every conversation, every shared moment, every time you looked at me as a man rather than a savage. But love is not enough to overcome the reality of our situation. Then we will make it enough, Sarah said fiercely. Listen to me. I have been thinking about this. The guards change shifts at midnight. There is a 15-minute gap when the night patrol passes by the eastern wall. The key to your cell hangs in the captain's office, but I know where he keeps it. There are horses in the stable. If we time it right, if we are careful and quick, we could make it out of the fort." "And then what?" Dakota asked, though she could see the spark of hope beginning to kindle in his eyes. "Where would we go? How would we survive? They would hunt us down." "We head south toward the reservation where your sister is. You know the land. You know how to survive in the desert. Once we get you to your family, you could disappear into Mexico. The soldiers rarely pursue that far, especially not for one escaped prisoner." "And you?" Dakota's voice was intense. "What happens to you, Sarah? You would be branded a criminal, a traitor. You could never return to your family, never go back to the life you knew." Sarah had thought about this, had spent sleepless nights weighing her options. "My family needs money, not me. Before we leave, I will take my wages that Captain Hartwell owes me and send them home. It will be enough to see them through the winter, to pay some of their debts. As for me, I will go with you, if you will have me." Dakota stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You would give up everything? Your family, your people, your entire world for me?" "You are my world now," Sarah said simply. "I would rather live in hiding with you than in luxury without you. I would rather face danger by your side than safety alone. That is what love means to me, Dakota. It means choosing you every single day, no matter the cost." Dakota reached through the bars again, cupping her face in his hands with infinite tenderness. "Then I will spend every day of my life proving myself worthy of such a gift. I will protect you, provide for you, love you with every breath in my body. If you truly wish to do this, if you are certain, then I will follow wherever you lead." Sarah leaned into his touch, feeling tears stream down her cheeks. "I am certain. I have never been more certain of anything in my life." They began to plan in earnest, speaking in whispers whenever Sarah brought his meals. She learned that Dakota knew the desert trails intimately, that he could navigate by stars and landmarks that would be invisible to untrained eyes. He told her about places where they could find water, caves where they could shelter, Apache camps where they might find temporary refuge. Sarah, for her part, began to prepare. She secreted away supplies, small things that would not be missed. Extra canteens of water hidden beneath her bed, dried beef and hardtack wrapped in cloth, a knife she had purchased from a trader who passed through the fort. She withdrew her wages from Captain Hartwell, claiming she needed to send them to her family, which was partially true. She kept half and sent half, along with a letter to her father explaining that she had found a new opportunity and would be traveling for some time. The lies tasted bitter on her tongue, but she swallowed them down. Her family would survive. They had the money now. And she was choosing her own path, choosing love over duty, choosing Dakota over everything else. 3 weeks after their decision, everything was ready. The moon would be dark that night, providing cover. Sarah had observed the guard rotations until she could predict them with her eyes closed. She had stolen the key to Dakota's cell 2 days prior, replacing it with a similar key from an unused storage building. The deception would not hold up under close scrutiny, but it would buy them precious time. As she brought Dakota his evening meal, her hands were shaking. "Tonight," she whispered. "At midnight. Be ready." Dakota nodded, his eyes burning with intensity. "Sarah, if something goes wrong, if they catch us, you must tell them I forced you. Tell them I threatened you, manipulated you. Let them believe you are a victim." "I will do no such thing," Sarah said firmly. "We are in this together. Whatever happens, we face it together." "You are the bravest woman I have ever known," Dakota said, his voice thick with emotion. "When we are free, when we are safe, I will marry you in the way of my people. I will take you as my wife, and we will build a life together, Sarah. I swear this to you." Sarah felt joy explode in her chest despite the fear. "And I will be honored to be your wife, Dakota. In any tradition, in any ceremony, my answer will always be yes." The hours until midnight crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah lay fully clothed on her bed, watching the hands of her pocket watch inch toward midnight with excruciating slowness. Her heart hammered against her ribs so forcefully that she feared it might burst through. Everything she had prepared was hidden in a canvas bag beneath her bed. The supplies, the water, a change of clothing more suitable for desert travel, and the stolen key that represented both their salvation and potential doom. At 1:45, she rose silently and gathered her belongings. The fort was quiet, most soldiers already asleep in their barracks. Only the night watch remained active, and Sarah had memorized their patterns with meticulous care. She slipped out of her quarters, keeping to the shadows, her soft-soled shoes making barely a whisper against the packed earth. The walk to the prison building felt like miles instead of yards. Every sound seemed magnified in the darkness: the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of wind through the sparse desert vegetation, the creak of the wooden gate as the patrol passed through on their rounds. Sarah pressed herself against the wall of the ammunition storage building, counting seconds in her head, waiting for the patrol to move past the eastern perimeter. When the moment came, she darted across the open space to the prison entrance. The guards stationed there had changed an hour ago, and as Sarah had observed over the past weeks, the new shift always took their first break around this time, stepping away briefly to share tobacco and complaints about their assignment. The door was unguarded for perhaps 10 minutes. It was all the time they would have. Her hands trembled as she fitted the key into the lock. The metallic click seemed impossibly loud in the stillness, but the door swung open. Sarah slipped inside, pulling it shut behind her but not locking it. They would need a clear path out. Dakota was standing at the bars of his cell, his eyes gleaming in the faint moonlight that filtered through the high window. He had somehow managed to work the chain connecting his ankle shackles loose from its anchor point in the wall, though the cuffs themselves still bound him. His face was tense, every muscle coiled with anticipation. "The guards?" he whispered. "Gone for now. We have maybe 8 minutes." Sarah's fingers fumbled with the cell key, her nervousness making her clumsy. Finally, the lock turned and the cell door swung open. Dakota stepped out, and for the first time since she had met him, he stood before her unchained from the wall, free within the confines of the building. "Your wrists," Sarah said, examining the iron cuffs that still bound him. "I do not have the key for these. It does not matter. Once we are in the desert, I can break them against rocks or find a way to remove them. We must go now, Sarah. Every second we delay increases the danger." She nodded and handed him the bag with their supplies. Dakota slung it over his shoulder, then took her hand in his. The touch steadied her, reminded her why she was doing this. Together they moved to the door. Dakota eased it open a crack, his eyes scanning the compound with the practiced gaze of a warrior. "The stable is across the open ground. We will be exposed. The patrol will not circle back for another 6 minutes," Sarah whispered. "If we move quickly, we can make it." They stepped out into the night, and Sarah felt the full weight of what they were attempting crash down upon her. One shout, one observant guard, one stroke of bad luck, and it would all be over. They would both hang for this, her for treason, him for escape and murder. But Dakota's hand was warm and strong around hers, and his presence beside her felt more right than anything she had ever known. They moved swiftly across the compound, staying low, using every shadow and structure for cover. The stable loomed ahead, dark and silent. Inside, the horses stirred restlessly at their approach, sensing unfamiliar movement. Dakota immediately went to work with practiced efficiency, selecting 2 sturdy mounts and saddling them with equipment that Sarah had marked days before. His movements were sure despite the chains on his wrists, each motion economical and purposeful. "You have done this before," Sarah observed, trying to keep her voice steady as she helped tighten the cinches. "Many times, though usually the horses belong to my people," Dakota replied with a hint of dark humor. "I am sorry to make you a horse thief as well as a traitor, Sarah Mitchell." "I am sorry for nothing," Sarah said fiercely. "Not when it means you are free." They led the horses to the stable door, and Dakota paused, listening intently. Sarah could hear nothing but the normal sounds of night, but she trusted his senses more than her own. After a moment he nodded, and they walked the horses out into the open. The eastern wall of the fort rose before them, and beyond it lay freedom. But between them and that wall stood 50 yards of open ground, illuminated by the pale starlight. There was no cover, no concealment. If anyone looked in their direction, they would be seen immediately. "We ride hard and fast," Dakota said quietly, helping Sarah mount her horse. "Do not look back. Do not slow down. Once we are through the gate, follow my lead. The desert is my home, and I will keep you safe. Sarah settled into the saddle, her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. Dakota swung up onto his own horse with fluid grace despite his bound wrists, and for a moment they sat there, poised on the knife's edge between captivity and freedom. "I love you," Sarah whispered, needing to say it one more time before they committed to this irreversible act. Dakota's eyes found hers in the darkness, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "And I love you, more than the sky loves the earth, more than the eagle loves the wind. Now ride, my brave one. Ride for our future." They spurred their horses forward, and the animals leaped into motion. The thunder of hooves on packed earth shattered the night silence like breaking glass. Behind them, Sarah heard shouts of alarm, the clanging of the warning bell, the confused yells of soldiers roused from sleep. The eastern gate stood open. The patrol had not yet returned to close it after their rounds. It was the stroke of fortune they needed. Dakota's horse surged through first, and Sarah followed, leaning low over her mount's neck as they galloped into the darkness beyond the fort's walls. A rifle shot cracked through the night, then another. Sarah heard the whistle of bullets passing overhead but did not slow. Dakota was ahead of her, his horse a dark shape against the star-filled sky, and she fixed her eyes on him, trusting him to lead them to safety. They rode hard for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, putting distance between themselves and Fort Verde. The terrain grew rougher, the land rising into rocky hills dotted with saguaro cacti that stood like silent sentinels. Finally, Dakota slowed his horse and guided them into a narrow canyon, whose walls would hide them from casual observation. "We rest here briefly," he said, dismounting and helping Sarah down. Her legs were shaking, whether from exertion or fear or the overwhelming reality of what they had just done, she could not say. "They will organize a pursuit party, but it will take time. By dawn we must be many miles from here." Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. Dakota pulled her into his arms and she buried her face against his chest, feeling the rapid beating of his heart beneath her cheek. "You did it," he murmured against her hair. "You set me free. No one has ever done such a thing for me, sacrificed so much. I am humbled by your courage." "We did it together," Sarah said, her voice muffled by his shirt, "and we will face whatever comes next together as well." They allowed themselves only a few minutes of rest before mounting again and continuing their flight. Dakota led them through terrain that seemed impassable to Sarah's untrained eye, finding trails where she saw only rocks and obstacles. He moved with absolute confidence, reading the land like a book written in a language only he understood. As the eastern sky began to lighten with the approach of dawn, Dakota guided them to a small cave hidden behind a tumble of boulders. "We will rest here during the day," he explained. "The soldiers will be searching, but they will expect us to keep moving. Here, we will be invisible." Inside the cave it was cool and dark, a welcome relief from the growing heat. Sarah unpacked some of their supplies while Dakota worked on his wrist shackles, using a rock to hammer at the rivets. It took nearly an hour, but finally the iron cuffs fell away, leaving raw, bleeding marks on his wrists. "Let me tend to those," Sarah said, pulling out the small medical kit she had brought. She cleaned the wounds gently, wrapping them in clean bandages, her hands tender against his skin. Dakota watched her work, his eyes soft. "You care for me as if I am precious to you. You are precious to me, the most precious thing in my world." Sarah tied off the last bandage and looked up at him. In the dim light of the cave, his face was all shadows and angles, beautiful and wild and hers. Dakota cupped her face in his newly freed hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks with infinite gentleness. "Then let me care for you as well. Let me prove that your faith in me was not misplaced." He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Sarah tilted her face up to meet him. Their first kiss was soft and sweet, a gentle exploration that quickly deepened into something more passionate. Sarah felt as if she were falling and flying simultaneously, every nerve in her body alive with sensation. Dakota's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and she went willingly, pressing herself against the solid strength of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Dakota rested his forehead against hers. "You are mine now, Sarah Mitchell, in the eyes of my people, in the eyes of the spirits that watch over us. You are my woman, and I am your man. No ceremony could make it more true than it already is. Then I am yours, Sarah whispered, and you are mine, for as long as we both live. They spent the day in the cave, talking in quiet voices, making plans for their future. Dakota told her more about his sister, about the reservation where she lived, about the life they might build there if they could reach it safely. Sarah described her family in greater detail, sharing stories and memories, grieving quietly for the life she had left behind while embracing the new one stretching before her. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Dakota went to scout the area around their hiding place. He returned with news that sent Sarah's heart plummeting. There are soldiers camped 3 miles to the north. I could see their fires. They have Apache scouts with them, trackers who know this land as well as I do. We will need to be very careful. Can we evade them? Sarah asked, trying to keep the fear from her voice. Perhaps. But Sarah, you must understand something. If they catch us, they will not be gentle. The punishment for helping a prisoner escape, especially an Apache warrior who killed soldiers, will be severe. I need you to be prepared for that possibility. Sarah straightened her spine, drawing on reserves of courage she had not known she possessed. I am prepared. I made my choice with open eyes, Dakota. Whatever happens, I will not regret loving you. That night, they rode again, moving south and east toward the reservation lands. Dakota pushed them hard, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and take small amounts of water. The desert night was cold, and Sarah wrapped herself in a blanket as they rode, her body aching from the unfamiliar exertion. 3 days they traveled this way, hiding during daylight hours, moving through the darkness, always aware of the pursuit behind them. On the 4th day of their flight, as the sun climbed toward its zenith and they prepared to find shelter, Dakota suddenly pulled his horse to a halt. His entire body went rigid, his eyes scanning the horizon with fierce intensity. Sarah followed his gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. Dust clouds rose in the distance, moving toward them with unmistakable purpose. The pursuit party had found their trail. How far to the reservation? Sarah asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror gripping her heart. 2 days if we push hard and the horses do not collapse beneath us. But they are closer than that, Sarah. They will overtake us before nightfall if we run. Dakota's jaw clenched, and she could see him calculating, weighing their impossible options. Then we do not run, Sarah said, a strange calm settling over her. We face them together, as we have faced everything else. Dakota turned to her, his eyes blazing with emotion. No, there is another way. You ride south as fast as this horse can carry you. I will lead them east, away from you. By the time they realize you are not with me, you will have enough distance to reach safety. My sister lives in a village called Cañón de los Embudos. Ask for Kimimela. Tell her everything. She will protect you. Absolutely not, Sarah said fiercely. I will not leave you to face them alone. I will not abandon you after everything we have been through. Sarah, please. Dakota's voice broke and she saw tears glistening in his eyes. Please, I cannot protect you from what they will do if they catch us both. But if you escape, if you live, then everything we have done will have meaning. You can tell our story. You can ensure that Kimimela knows I died free, that my last days were filled with love instead of hatred. Give me this, my beloved. Let me save you even if I cannot save myself. Sarah felt tears streaming down her own face. Every fiber of her being screamed against leaving him, against accepting the sacrifice. But she could see in his eyes that this was the only way he could find peace, the only way he could reconcile leading her into this danger. I love you, she whispered, her voice breaking. I love you more than life itself, Dakota. He pulled her close, kissing her with desperate intensity, pouring every ounce of his love and devotion into that single moment. When he pulled back, his hands framed her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. And I love you, Sarah Mitchell. In this life and whatever comes after, I will love you. You have given me the greatest gift any person can give another. You have shown me that I am worthy of love, that my life has value beyond violence and survival. Because of you, I die as a man who was loved, and that is more than most warriors can claim. Do not speak of dying, Sarah sobbed. Promise me you will fight to survive. Promise me you will try to escape again, that you will find a way back to me. I promise I will do everything in my power to live, Dakota said, though they both knew it was likely a promise he could not keep. Now go. Ride hard, and do not look back. Remember me, Sarah. Remember us. He slapped her horse's flank hard, and the animal bolted forward. Sarah clung to the saddle, her vision blurred by tears, her heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. She wanted to turn back, to fight beside him, to die with him if necessary. But she honored his sacrifice by doing as he asked, riding south with every ounce of speed her horse possessed. Behind her she heard Dakota let out a war cry that echoed across the desert, heard the thunder of his horse's hooves as he raced east, drawing the soldiers away from her path. The sound of that cry would haunt her for the rest of her life. Sarah rode until her horse was stumbling with exhaustion, until the sun had set and risen again, until she could no longer feel her own body from the pain and fatigue. She navigated by the stars as Dakota had taught her, heading always south, toward the reservation lands, toward the sister who did not yet know that her brother had sacrificed everything for love. On the 6th day after leaving Fort Verde, delirious with thirst and grief, Sarah finally saw the scattering of wickiups that marked an Apache village. She slid from her horse and collapsed, unable to take another step. When she woke, she was lying on a blanket inside a dwelling made of brush and canvas. A woman sat beside her, pressing a cup of water to her lips. The woman was beautiful, with features that reminded Sarah painfully of Dakota, the same high cheekbones, the same intelligent dark eyes. "Kimimela?" Sarah whispered hoarsely. The woman's eyes widened. "You know my name? Who are you? How did you come here?" Sarah struggled to sit up, and the whole story poured out of her. Meeting Dakota, falling in love with him, helping him escape, their flight across the desert, and finally his sacrifice to ensure her survival. She spoke of his love for his sister and her children, his worry for their well-being, his courage and kindness despite everything he had endured. Kimimela listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. When Sarah finished, the Apache woman pulled her into a tight embrace. "My brother sent you to me. He trusted me to care for the woman he loved. You are welcome here, sister. You will stay with us, and we will protect you as family." "But Dakota," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "What happened to him? Have you heard anything?" Kimimela's face grew grave. "News travels, even to the reservation. 3 days ago, word came that an escaped Apache prisoner was recaptured near the Mexican border. He fought with great ferocity, injuring several soldiers before they subdued him. They were taking him back to Fort Verde to stand trial." Sarah's heart leaped with desperate hope. "He lives? He is alive?" "He lived as of 3 days ago. But Sarah, you must understand. They will not be merciful. An Apache who escapes and fights will face the harshest punishment, most likely execution." "No." Sarah stood abruptly, swaying with weakness but driven by a determination that burned brighter than her exhaustion. "No, I will not let that happen. I have to go back. I have to try to save him." "That is madness," Kimimela said gently. "You would be arrested the moment you showed your face at the fort. You helped him escape. They will hang you beside him." "Then let them," Sarah said fiercely. "I would rather die fighting for him than live safely without him. He sacrificed himself for me. How can I do any less for him?" Kimimela studied her for a long moment, and Sarah saw respect dawn in the other woman's eyes. "You truly love him, not as a rebellion against your people, not as an adventure, but truly." "With everything I am," Sarah confirmed. The Apache woman nodded slowly. "Then perhaps there is a way. Not to free him, that would be impossible now, but to save his life, possibly. My husband's brother works at the fort as a translator. He has some influence with the new commanding officer, a man less rigid than Captain Hartwell. If we could get a message to him, if we could convince him that Dakota is valuable as a scout rather than dangerous as an example, they might spare his life." It was a slim hope, barely a thread to cling to, but Sarah seized it with both hands. What would I need to do? Over the next hours, Kimimela and Sarah crafted a careful plan. Sarah would write a letter to the new commander, explaining that she had not been coerced but had acted of her own free will out of love. She would offer to return and face judgment if it meant Dakota's life would be spared. She would argue that executing him would accomplish nothing but creating a martyr, while allowing him to live and serve as a scout would demonstrate mercy and potentially ease tensions with the Apache people. The letter was sent with Kimimela's brother-in-law, a man named Mosca who had connections at the fort. Then came the agonizing wait. Days stretched into a week, then 2. Sarah lived with Kimimela and her children, learning Apache ways, teaching the children English in return, trying to keep her mind occupied so she did not go mad with worry. Takala, Ahiga, and little Ayasha took to Sarah immediately, sensing perhaps that she carried a piece of their beloved uncle in her heart. Ayasha especially would climb into Sarah's lap in the evenings, asking her to tell stories about Dakota, wanting to hear again and again about how brave he was, how much he loved them. Finally, after 3 weeks that felt like 3 years, Mosca returned. Sarah's heart stopped when she saw his face. It was grave but not grief-stricken. There was news, but whether good or bad, she could not tell. "The commander agreed to see you," Mosca said without preamble. "He was impressed by your letter, by your willingness to face judgment. He has offered terms. If you return and testify that you acted alone, that Dakota did not manipulate or threaten you, he will commute the death sentence to imprisonment. Dakota would serve 20 years at a military prison, but he would live. 20 years. Sarah felt the weight of that number settle over her like a stone. Dakota would be in his 50s before he saw freedom again, but he would be alive. There would be hope, however distant. "And what happens to me?" Sarah asked. "You would be charged with aiding an escape, but given your cooperation and the unusual circumstances, the sentence would likely be minimal. Perhaps a year in a women's facility, perhaps just time served and release with a warning. The commander believes making an example of a white woman would cause more problems than it would solve." Sarah looked at Kimimela, at the children who had become so dear to her in such a short time. She thought about the life she could build here, safe and hidden. Then she thought about Dakota in chains again, facing death, and the choice became simple. When do we leave? The journey back to Fort Verde was the longest of Sarah's life. She spent it preparing herself for whatever would come, drawing strength from the memory of Dakota's love, from the knowledge that she was doing everything possible to save him. When they arrived at the fort, she was immediately taken into custody, but true to the commander's word, she was treated with relative courtesy. She was given a clean cell, adequate food, and allowed to wash and change into proper clothes before her hearing. The hearing itself was a blur. Sarah testified exactly as she had promised, taking full responsibility for the escape plan, explaining her love for Dakota with simple honesty that seemed to surprise the military tribunal. She spoke of his intelligence, his nobility of character, his love for his family. She painted a picture of a man who deserved mercy, not vengeance. When it was over, the commander called for a recess. Sarah was returned to her cell to await the decision. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Finally, as the sun set outside her small window, the door opened, and the commander himself entered. "Miss Mitchell, the tribunal has reached its decision. In light of your testimony and cooperation, you are hereby sentenced to 6 months imprisonment, with credit for time already served. You will be released in approximately 5 months. As for the prisoner Dakota, his death sentence has been commuted to 20 years hard labor at a military facility. However," he paused, and Sarah held her breath. "However, I have reviewed his case thoroughly, and I believe there may be an alternative. The Army is in need of Apache scouts to help maintain peace in the territory. If Dakota were to agree to serve as a scout for a period of 10 years, remaining on the reservation under military supervision during that time, his sentence would be considered served at the completion of his service. He would then be granted full freedom." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "Can I see him? Can I tell him?" "Tomorrow. I will arrange it." That night, Sarah barely slept. When morning came, she was escorted to a different building than where Dakota had been held before. This one was better maintained, the cells cleaner, more humane. And there, in the last cell, she saw him. Dakota looked thinner than she remembered, his face showing the signs of rough treatment, but his eyes were still bright and alert. When he saw Sarah, His entire face transformed with joy and disbelief. "Sarah, you are alive. I feared. I am alive," Sarah said, gripping the bars between them. "And so are you. Listen to me, my love. Listen to everything I have to tell you." She explained the deal, the choice he had to make. Dakota listened in silence, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he said quietly, 10 years. That is a long time, Sarah. But at the end, you would be free, truly free. We could be together without running, without hiding. And during those years, I would wait for you. I would come to the reservation, I would visit whenever they allowed it. I would be there. You would wait 10 years for me? Dakota's voice was rough with emotion. I would wait a lifetime if necessary. You are worth it. We are worth it. Dakota reached through the bars and took her hands in his. Then I will do it. I will serve as their scout. I will keep the peace and I will count every single day until I can hold you as a free man. But Sarah, you must live your life during those years. Do not put your dreams on hold for me. My only dream is you, Sarah said firmly. Everything else is just details. 5 months later, Sarah was released from custody. She immediately traveled to the reservation where Dakota was stationed as a scout. The military had provided him with a small cabin on the reservation grounds, and Sarah moved into a nearby dwelling, finding work as a teacher for the Apache children. They saw each other as often as Dakota's duties allowed, their love deepening with each meeting. Sarah became close friends with Kimimela, became a second mother to her children. She learned the Apache language, learned their customs and traditions, and found a home among people who had welcomed her when her own people would have shunned her. The years passed slowly but not unbearably. Dakota proved to be an excellent scout, respected by both his Apache people and the military commanders. He worked to build bridges between the cultures, to find peaceful solutions to conflicts, to protect his people while fulfilling his obligations. Sarah waited, as she had promised. She taught. She lived. She loved Dakota through visits and letters and stolen moments, and she counted down the days until he would be free. Finally, on a bright spring morning in 1888, Dakota's term of service came to an end. The military held a small ceremony, officially granting him his freedom and citizenship. Sarah stood in the crowd, her heart so full she thought it might burst. When it was over, Dakota walked straight to her, no longer bound by chains or duty or obligation. He dropped to one knee in front of everyone assembled, pulling out a ring he had crafted himself from silver and turquoise during his years of service. Sarah Mitchell, you have waited for me with a patience and love I could never deserve. You have sacrificed everything for me, stood by me through the darkest times, and never wavered in your faith. Will you marry me? Not as a promise for the future, but as a celebration of the life we have already built together? Yes, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married twice, once in a traditional Apache ceremony, with Kimimela and her children standing witness, and once by a visiting minister for the legal recognition. Sarah wore a dress of white deerskin decorated with beads and turquoise, and Dakota wore the traditional clothing of his people, his head held high with pride. They built a home together on the reservation, a place where both cultures could blend and coexist. Dakota continued his work as a mediator and guide, while Sarah expanded her school, teaching children of all backgrounds. They had 3 children of their own over the years, 2 daughters and a son, who grew up speaking both English and Apache, who understood both worlds and belonged to both. Kimimela's children became like nieces and nephews to them, and as the years passed, their family grew and flourished. Sarah never returned to Boston, never saw her birth family again, though she sent letters and money when she could. In return, she received occasional correspondence telling her of her siblings' lives, their marriages, their children. They had survived, as she had known they would. On warm evenings, Sarah and Dakota would sit outside their home, watching the sun set over the desert that had nearly killed them and ultimately given them life. Dakota would hold her hand, his thumb tracing the same patterns it had traced through the bars of his cell all those years ago. Do you ever regret it? He would ask sometimes. Everything you gave up for me? And Sarah would always give the same answer, her eyes meeting his with perfect certainty. I regret nothing. You showed me what it means to truly live, to love without reservation, to choose courage over comfort. You are my home, Dakota. You always have been, from the moment I first saw you. Everything I lost was nothing compared to what I gained. And what did you gain, my wise wife? Everything that matters, Sarah would reply, leaning into his embrace. Love, purpose, family, a life lived fully and without regret. You gave me the world, Dakota, our world. And it is more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. They lived to see their grandchildren grow, to witness the slow changes in the territory as Arizona moved toward statehood, to watch as understanding between peoples grew, imperfect but real. Their story became a legend on the reservation, told around fires on cold nights. The tale of the brave white woman who freed an Apache warrior, and the love that survived everything the world threw against it. And when Sarah finally passed at the age of 73, with Dakota holding her hand and their children and grandchildren surrounding them, her last words were simple and true. I would do it all again. Every moment, every sacrifice, all of it, just to love you. Dakota followed her 3 years later, dying peacefully in his sleep, a free man in the home they had built together. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the desert, two souls who had found each other against all odds, and had chosen love over every obstacle the world had placed in their path. Their story lived on, passed down through generations, a testament to the power of love to transcend boundaries, to the courage it takes to choose your own path, and to the truth that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is listen to your heart, no matter where it leads you.